Well, hi everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the RTI Speed Tips by Bob and Chad. By now, of course, everybody's been racing, and we've seen the effects of the racing, and it just we're getting decent weather finally, and so it's been really good. This last weekend, they rained out on they rained out. Yeah, they rained out on Friday night, but then Boone ran. It was a little bit chilly at Boone. I've decided, yeah, I can watch it on IMCA TV. So how you been, Chad?
Been good. Yeah, we've been really busy here, trying to keep up with the preseason madness and keep things rolling. So, been going good.
Yeah, we're the Rockies still probably about 2.5 to 3 weeks behind, and we ended up getting a car this weekend that's going to need a right side stub, and we just actually put a right side stub on one of the Bristol cars and got that fixed last week. So it seems like the racing activity has definitely picked up. Have you had any chance to go to any shows since Bristol?
Nope, that was so far the only one. I think we'll get rolling around here in a couple weeks and probably do some local shows, and then I think World of Outlaws comes to Fountain City pretty early in May, and then the USMTS boys are up here right around then. So we're getting ready here to get some factory support in locally.
Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty cool. This is episode number 36.
36.
Hard to believe, 36 episodes. And once again, we appreciate all you guys logging in and coming along for the hour. We both definitely enjoy it. And thanks for the business that it generates. And it's just been a fun time. Weather needs to warm up a little bit, though. Bob's not a cold weather guy anymore. Going to the races, and when my teeth are starting to chatter, it's like, I think this isn't a winter sport.
I think they're calling for snow here tomorrow, or flurries.
No. Well, I seen on the news last night the weather that there's like going to be down to like 20 degrees one of the nights, and I'm thinking, well, holy smokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the temperature ended up being today. I think it was around 60, but the wind has been really big. So even if you get a halfway decent day with the sun, it looks good, but when you get out there, it's not all that great. Landon says it's showtime. So once again, anybody that's listening, if you guys got any questions, we've got plenty of things going on that we can sure talk about. Anything new and exciting? Any new developments at Wehrs Machine? New products?
Well, we dropped that screw jack today. I don't think I got one here with me, but we make that screw jack with the shock mount on it, and the standard one is a 9-inch long bolt, and we made one with a 7-inch long bolt to just be a little bit shorter there. Some of the cars, the deck tin's closer to that mount, so the 9-inch is a little bit too long. But
gotcha.
Yeah, so this time of year, it's hard to be making new products. I mean, we've actually been making that for a little bit of time, but we just had the marketing team drop it today. So, but this time of year, we're a little too busy to be working on new stuff.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, it's just amazing. I mean, the growth that you guys have had. I mean, it just blows me away. I'm glad you still have time to do the show.
No, it's been an unbelievable beginning to the year here. A record first quarter again for us. So it just goes to show that, when you provide good products and good service like we do, Bob, it's, the stuff kind of almost sells itself. And we got such a great team of dealers and race car drivers and engine builders and chassis builders. I know I keep saying it, but it might be my name on that banner behind me, but man, there is an army behind this outfit to keep it rolling, from the product inspirations from different drivers and crew chiefs and chassis builders, and it's turned into quite a deal for a white kid from Bangor. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, it's been very interesting to watched the growth over the years, and of course, when you have the standards that you live by, it's pretty easy to get a good product. I mean, you're not letting stuff go that's not kosher. I mean, it's not like well, the word is, it's not like it's not good enough. It's got to be great, or it's not good enough.
Well, we were using a phrase, the best or nothing.
Yeah, there you go.
That's Mercedes-Benz's, so I had to stop using that.
Well, it's Mercedes-Benz of race car parts. I mean, what the heck?
Yeah.
Yeah, snow at Deer Creek Speedway tonight. Awesome, Philip. That's exciting. Justin, how does a rebound right front shock affect how much the driver can feel the right front? What velocity of the right front travel is almost influential for steering on the right front through the center? Well, I can't really tell you the velocity. I'd like to be able to answer that question, but being able to put in-car data on this stuff to be able to answer some of these questions, the sanctioning bodies aren't really good at. They're not allowing us to do some of the testing that we used to could. But as far as your feel, in my opinion, a high right front rebound shock should actually help your feel, because it's keeping the tire loaded on the racetrack and keeping the car loaded over there on that right front. So in my opinion, I think a higher rebound should give you feel. Biggest thing though is, and this is a thing that, it's a little complicated to understand, but the fact that every shock, the way it's built, we can put a lot of rebound in a guy's right front as far as numbers. However, we can still put a lot of bleed in it. So the actual 0 point, the old hand dyno where you pull it apart by your hand, we can make a shock that's got a ton of rebound at 2 inches per second, but it has almost 0 at no inches per second. And so that's kind of the key. If you start, if the shock's got a little bleed in it with rebound, you'll be able to feel it. When we take bleed out of the shock, that takes feel out of the shock. So it just all depends on how the shock is actually built. And it's just like everything. There's numerous guys that build different, to different numbers. So I hope that answers part of your question. Dwayne, I bought 2 of the Wehrs machine metric trailing arm bolts. I'm not sure what they fit, but they don't fit a stock metric car or stock metric chassis mounting bracket, and they do not fit the stock trailing arm bushings. The bolts are too thick. It's a good time, but cannot alter the frame, a mounting bracket, or the stock bushing. What do these fit if not a metric car? Are you planning to make or sell some that fit a metric stock bushing? There you go, Chad.
Well, I've never heard of a sanctioning body say you couldn't use a larger, safer bolt, but I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. Most of the guys drill the chassis holes out and the bushings out and don't have an issue. But yeah, I mean, if you want a refund, send it back. We would certainly give you your money back. Or if there's a stock car guy by you that, has the larger ones. I don't know where you're from or what the story is, but we would definitely give you your money back. Otherwise, have your tech man call me, because increasing the bolt size on a trailing arm on a race car is always a good idea in my book.
All right. What do you guys find yourself changing on a Northern Sport Mod to switch from an open motor to a crate motor combo, as far as maybe trail or lead or loads of bite? Well, once again, when you do go to an open motor, and the thing also is with the open motor and a different type of carburetor, 2-barrel carburetor, your engine builder really has to focus on drivability of that open motor. And as far as changes on the chassis, we've got quite a few guys that run open motors, and our setup is not a lot different for the open motor. Sometimes we'll soften the front end a little bit, but not really much. And as far as traction, you could try putting a little bit more bite in it. I do think the open motor likes a little bit more tail percentage than what the crate motor does. But like I said, as far as numbers wise, I mean, our setup book says the same stuff for the open motor guys as the crate engine cars do. Michael, you have to drill the control arm both. Yep, actually, Chad just said that. When I started my apprenticeship, they always said, practice makes perfect. A journeyman told me it was perfect practice that makes perfect. Yeah, that's a good phrase. I like that, Ryan. Good job.
Yep.
Jeff, Bob, are you behind on your shock, and can we get a set of UMP shocks for a need of 7 shocks? What I would do, Jeff, is I would call Bobby and tell him that you talked to me on the tube here. I don't think he's, it kind of depends on who you talk to. I don't think he's that far behind. I don't think it would be a big situation to get you your stuff out. He was behind there for quite a while, and he was working about 90 hours a week trying to get caught up. And it looked to me like when I was in there this morning, looked like the shelves were starting to be a little empty from the repairs. So I'd give him a call. I think he can get it done for you. Dwayne, read my comment. We cannot alter anything. Yep. Okay. No problem. Bo, what are the benefits of the Chevelle Clip 3-link having uppers mounted straight with little to no caster gain in them? Well, once again, Bo, that's kind of a chassis builder deal. Everybody does and designs their front end a little bit differently. So if you're buying one from a chassis builder, I think there's, I've seen them done both ways. We actually don't do our front end that way. I still believe the Sport Mod can use a little bit more caster gain just because of the rear suspension. With a 4-link car, your drive is pretty much all off of your upper link and your angles in the back. Where with a 3-link car, your drive's kind of pretty dictative off of that left rear trailing arm and the angle that's in it, along with the angle that's on the upper link. However, I do think when you counter steer the car a little bit, it helps to load that left rear. A little old school stuff, but it just kind of helps to load that left rear just a little bit to initiate the bite. Where with the 4-link, you've got more angles, you got more things going on that helps initiate the bite, because that's the key, is the initial bite when it first comes, because once the tire starts to hook up, it should continue to stay hooked up. But that's my opinion. Once again, like I said, that's the way we do it on our front ends for the BAT cars, and we've had pretty good success with it. Do you think tinting windows at the legal level is worth, or should bite and bullet once get pulled over and caught? Boy, Kay, I'd have no idea. That's a great question, just not necessarily one I can answer. Are any of you hiring? Well, at this point, Jason, right now I could use 2 more guys. The problem is in 3 or 4 weeks, I probably would be overstaffed. So we're not currently hiring. I don't know what your capacity is, Chad, or what.
I think we're always hiring, it seems like. But yeah, and if you're a machinist, definitely we would take you tomorrow. The trade skills in this country are somewhat shunned out of high schools and the college level to be looked down on. But skilled labor, I mean, man, it's scary when you look at these tech schools and how few people are enrolled in the machine shop or the welding or the plumbing and electrical. And these are good jobs that people, make good money at and can raise a family on the wage. And it's frustrating. We fight it nonstop, it feels like here. And we struggle because we're in a smaller community. We have La Crosse, which is 50,000 people right up the road. But I mean, I think there was 4 kids in the machining class. So we're definitely always hiring. So I don't know where you're from, Jason, but if you're local, come on in. If you want to move to Bangor, it's a beautiful part of the world. So yeah, definitely hiring in the machine shop right now.
Yeah, well, and that is one thing that I think is kind of sad, because we focused so much. There was an era there where we focused so much on getting that college education, and I'm not degrading that college education. I think it's extremely important, and things like that. But we did kind of go away from the skilled labor type trades. And like you said, it was kind of looked down upon because, well, you're just a blue collar guy and stuff like that. Well, some of them guys make dang good money, and if you're good at it, I mean, you can pretty much name your price almost wherever you go. The kid that we have here, he's 16 years old and he works for us part time a little bit. And I told him, I said, "Now, are you going to school or what are you going to do?" And he says, "Well, I'm probably going to go to DMAC and looking into some automotive stuff." And I said, "Well, how about some machining type stuff? I do have a lathe, and it's kind of been sitting there, and I've never really had anybody that knew how to run the darn thing." And as we can see, I already have experience with my purple blue finger here that my days of running any of the machines are limited, like as starting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
At least you still have it.
What?
At least you didn't smash it off.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, at least I still have it, because at first when that thing happened, I'm thinking, oh my God, I think I just took the end of my finger off, but luckily I didn't. And it wasn't the machine's fault. It was the operator's fault because I was not paying attention. I finished up my machine technology class in 4 months, then going through a welding course for the year in southeast Iowa. Well, I'll tell you what, Wisconsin's a beautiful state, man. They got a lot of Great Lakes up there too, because I was watching a fishing tournament last weekend while I was fiddling around with my boat. When trying to get more front grip on a Penn, Ohio style car, what type of percentages are a good starting point, and what's the different sensation in the seat from rear drive to front grip trail braking car? Well, Eric, I'm going to do my best to answer that one. Keep in mind any of these really questions is kind of my opinion, but I still always believe front grip. It's phase one of the corner. I mean, I really don't care what the race car does. If you can't enter the corner good and have a good feel of your front end, so you can steer it up or down or where you want to go. And that is so important. Percentages wise, if I'm not mistaken, you guys have a pretty good size spoiler and you run a pretty decent tire. So I would have to believe that, your cars could get by with 52, 3, 4%. I don't think you'd need over 54%. And a lot of the grip has to do with some of that spoiler. But as far as the sensation from the seat, you should be able to, through the steering wheel, constantly feel the front end. And when you're trail braking the car, trail braking really helps the car kind of control the rear of the car more so than the front of the car. But that's kind of the key. You can actually set up with a looser type car to get more front grip and then still maintain your rear grip with the help of trail braking. So I think I still believe phase one's the key to the corner, and that's all about the front end setting. And I've been, we first built our modified back, I don't know how many years ago. I spent designing that. When we did that design of that first car, that was the biggest thing that I spent the most time on, was getting the front end to work right. And I believe that was our success in the IMCA world from the very beginning. It was our front end was just better than our competitors. A couple of weeks I asked about my brakes and why I couldn't get rear brake. The answer to my question ended up being the lines running to the gauges. Oh, never thought of that. I redid the setup and just put the bias gauges right into the T from the master cylinder. Well, great job there, Gerald, because I don't know why I didn't think about that. That's how we do it here. We don't actually run a line to the gauges because that's just one more pain in the rear, so to speak. We do the same thing that you do. We run a T right off there, and so you can still see those gauges when you're sitting in the cockpit. And those are gauges that when you're under racing conditions, you don't necessarily need to be looking at anyway. Rick, if the pull bar mount on the frame is 4 inches left of center shaft, would it carry the left front wheel? Most definitely. When you're pulling to the left of center, you're pulling everything over and the car's kind of falling down, because your pull bar actually, in a sense, keeps the car somewhat loaded. So in other words, like if your car is really tight, you can actually move the pull bar towards the right of the car, 1 inch, 2 inches towards the right tire. Well, wherever your pull bar is mounted, whichever tire it's closest to is the tire that's going to influence. So if you're 4 inches off center, that left rear is going to have a ton of bite. Well, when that happens, there's no resistance on the right side, so the car's going to kind of fall over on the right rear and tote that left front a bunch. So yeah, in answer to your question, Rick, it definitely will. Eric, do you know anyone who builds a second generation Camaro extended lower A-frame, lower controller? Looking for options. Close Racing is the only one I can find. Yeah, Eric, I'm not super aware of that. That would probably be something that's a little bit more in Joel's wheelhouse out there, because some of their rules allow that. Where we're at here, our rules are pretty specific, and if you're a part of this industry and you build something that's not legal, you think you got to the woodshed before. This is a whole new style of woodshed. So you just don't go that direction, and your reputation is worth too much to try to cheat. But like I said, I know where Joel is at out there. Some of their rules allow a little more flexibility with that stuff, and he would be the guy to talk to. Travis, when is a lightweight 9-inch gear needed? Well, first you would want to make sure that it's legal in your sanctioning body. Then, in my opinion, I still believe in, lightweight components. If you can take 3 or 4 pounds of unsprung weight out of that car on a rough racetrack, it's going to give you an advantage. And you can put that weight where you actually want it. And so I think it would be a good idea. However, the cost difference new-wise, I think there's quite a bit of difference in price between some of those lightweight gears and some of those others. So you just have to kind of see what your budget would like, and that's my opinion. IMCA modified, going to try a soft preload left rear. What's a good starting point for droop load? Depends on what spring you run it. And as a rule of thumb, I kind of take that load number. If my spring is 100-pound spring, I load it to 150, kind of a 1.5%. But everybody does that a little bit differently too. I know when we've run some of the 75-pound stuff, we've loaded it to, to 150 pounds also. And so it kind of depends on, 125 versus 100 or 75. But that's kind of 1.5 times the spring, I think, is a pretty good start. What have you heard, Chad?
That sounds about normal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty consistent place to start from. The problem is if you start doing too much load there, keep in mind you're working with a soft spring and you're starting to ask it to do something that it's going to make the car a little more inconsistent. So I wouldn't go overboard. I'm building a stock car myself. Do you have any recommendations for spring rates to start with? 1979 or 79 Monte Carlo. Never raced stock cars before, only smaller cars. Thanks for all your information. A good place to start, since you haven't raced one of them, is I would start with a good standard setup. 1,000-pound right front, 1,100-pound, 1,000-pound right front, 900 for a left front. You might have to go a little stiffer. Some guys, the old boy used to be 1,000 left front and a 1,100 right front. So it kind of depends. I know there's some guys that are trying a lot of softer stuff, but if you're new to the class, I think you'd be better off to start with something a little more conservative. Right rear, 2.25 to 250. Your left rear, you're probably in that 175 range would be a good place to start. Any questions about that? I'd give my old buddy Paul Berger a call up there at B&B. He's pretty good with the information. He does this for a living, and tell him that his name was referred to you during a Bob and Chad show. And then 2 weeks from now, if he doesn't answer your question, you tell me about it so that I'll talk to Paul. But no, Paul's really good. It won't be a problem. Rick says, I'm centered on the rear end, but it's mounted to the left of the drive shaft. Okay, so then you must have an offset rear end. I still think, unless you have an offset rear end, but if you're centered to the, well, once again, I would try moving it. I would move it 1 inch at a time. I'd move it to the right 1 inch and see if that helps. But the other thing that can cause the problem of lifting the left front is too much panhard bar angle. You got the panhard bar too low on the rear end with a lot of angle. It's very possible that can cause the car to lift the left front too. Those are the two things that we see most generally on a modified that cause the car to lift, because nobody's running a real soft. Used to be people would run some real soft right rear springs, which would cause that problem, but in today's world, nobody's doing that. Brian, Chad, when can we add Wehrs brake bias setup into the cockpit?
Probably never going to make gauges. Sorry.
How about those brake adjusters?
I got a really cool one designed. We just haven't had time to do it, and it's different than anything on the market and truly revolutionary, I think. But I don't know if I'll get it done for 2022 or not. I know the idea guy is desperate for it, so we're trying to figure that out. But it will certainly change the game of adjusting brakes if we can pull it off.
Awesome. And you've heard it here first, guys. So now we know something like that's coming. Pressure, everybody. Pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, Harvey, you can get a Crown Vic lower. It widens at 1 inch. Oh, that's right. I do remember hearing something about that. Fits right in. Great addition there, Harvey. I appreciate you bringing that up. Also, thanks for the T-bar setup. And Brian wants to thank you for the T-bar setup at Bristol.
Brian was the guy that got us off the couch the day we were going to take the day off.
He did?
Yeah, we had to go out to the track to get him a T-bar kit, and then we never left. As soon as we opened the door up, it was one right after another. So a couple guys got the day off, like Austin and Billy and Landon, but Jared and I, we had to go to work and show the boys up. So,
Isn't it funny how that younger generation, they pull that off all the time. I just don't get it.
yeah.
Oh, well. They work hard, so I can't believe they probably didn't earn it. Nathan, I see some hobby stocks running a beadlock. Do you see it's a safety feature that would be beneficial? Well, I mean, a beadlock's a safety feature, period. I'm not that aware of the hobby stock rules as far as the tires go. I've got some knowledge about shock absorbers, but that's about all I can really tell you about the hobby stock stuff. I've not been involved with it. We can't run a beadlock down here on our factory stocks. Use an Aero, I think 50 or 52 series rims, no roll off, lasted 3 years. We run Hoosier 10-inch used slicks and 15 by 8-inch rims. The right rear rolls over crazy, but it stays up with 12 pounds. Awesome. Sean wants to thank us for been listening for a year now, and you're a huge help. And Chad, I'll have to share this with you because I had a guy call me today and had some questions and stuff. He had actually bought the school, the online school on the stock car school this year, and he watches the show all the time. And he went on and on and on about how you and I have really given so much back to the industry by doing this show. And I'm like, well, dude, you just made my day. We're doing a show tonight. So anyway, Mike Kennedy, how are you, Mike? Any thoughts on Swift TH series springs? Well, first of all, it depends on what you're running. I don't have a lot of knowledge with that Swift spring. I know Kelly Shyrock has played with it. I know at one time, I don't know what he's actually doing now, but I know at one time in his stock car, he thought it was a benefit in the stock car. He wasn't sure he liked the feel of it in his modified, but that's been a year ago, so I have no idea. Brian wants to make sure he'll run a prototype.
Yep.
Bucks, would you ever have more left rear bite number with a soft spring loaded to 150 pounds or have more right rear bite? Well, a lot of times you end up with that spring loaded like that statically in a static setting. You're going to end up having a bigger load number, more than likely. Now, the downside to the bigger load number, anytime you have something that's a larger load number, you're going to have a little bit of an issue. It can take side bite away from the car. So like I've told many people, not saying that left rear spring, and to be honest with you, Buck, we just added to the Race Tech Knowledge Center. We did a video here last week on moving a car from a 100 from a 200 right or 200 left rear to a 100 right rear, and we ended up having quite a bit more bite in it. And at that particular time, we ended up having to go more with a little bit more panhard bar angle, and the car seemed to work pretty decent. I've yet to get to the point where I feel as consistent with that soft left rear spring on a sport mod. With a modified, I think it's a definite plus. So you just have to remember, if you take more left rear bite in it, you're going to have to sacrifice the side bite issue too. Jeff, Chad sent it to me for research and development on your brake bias gauge. He'll probably have all kinds of options on that, but I'll let him know. Bob or Chad, without giving anything away, yeah, that's another one of those long words. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Is there any new products currently in the pipeline we can look forward to? On my standpoint, I'm kind of almost a little bit in the same situation as Chad is. We're trying to work so hard to keep day to day to stay not so covered up that we haven't even had a thought of anything. And for me, I take going to the racetrack to be able to do that, and we just haven't had the racing days. Or if we've had a race day, the conditions haven't been good. So that's the answer for me. I'll let Chad answer.
Yeah, it's hard to work on new stuff this time of year. One thing that we are testing right now is a new jam nut on the sliders instead of the pull pin style lock that swings around that occasionally knocked off. And it's one of the most probably when we're on the road, one of the biggest problems we have is that pin. So we've made some jam nut prototypes that we've sent out to some of the guys the last couple of weeks, and we started in Bristol, and we got a bunch more out last weekend. So that's one of the biggest changes we're looking to do, just to have just a jam nut on top of the slider. You know, ours, you got to go a quarter turn and then flip it one way or the other way. Most of them are a full turn adjustment, but so we're looking to evolve there and just put a jam nut on there. We're working on another tool for the Ultra Force side that I can't really release any knowledge about that, but it's going to be a pretty neat collaboration with the guy that built the bump steer gauge, and then of course that brake adjuster. And we got a long list. There's, like I said earlier, there's so many great people in the industry that, you know, have so many great ideas, and I'm just excited that they bring them to us and we get to bring them to the market and make a good product at a reasonable price in this country by American machinists and fabricators. And, you know, it's a dream come true for me. So stay tuned. We got a long list of cool stuff coming up. We don't ever stop here.
Do you guys recommend a 20-inch soft loaded left rear and a 16-inch right rear, good starting spring rate? To be honest with you, Eric, I'm not a real huge fan of that 20-inch spring. I actually like a 16-inch left rear with a 13-inch right rear. The problem is when you get too tall of a spring, now all of a sudden you've got so much of the spring that can be moving around rather than compressing. So there's so many coils wrapped there. You know, I know a lot of people had that 20-inch spring and was compressing it quite a bit. But when you take a 20-inch spring, like a 100-pound spring that's a 20-inch spring, and compress it a lot, you get a lot of bow, and I think that makes for some consistency issues. We've tried both 16s. I still think that right rear, with the amount of load that the right rear gets, I'm not a fan of a real tall spring. I stay pretty much with that 13-inch spring, and that's just what I've had good luck with. Numbers wise, you know, the trend is probably in that 225 to 250 range for a spring. Left rear, we've got guys anywhere from 75 to 125 with the taller spring. Kind of just depends. Check with your chassis builder, see if he's got any information or what he really wants you to do, and kind of follow that. But that's what my experience has kind of led me to believe. Chad, I have your OD grab cup on all four corners and like them. I had my right front spring get stuck in the cup after the first race and had to pry it out. The cup is fine. A new spring fits right away. What would cause that spring to fail or change diameter?
Well, on the unfortunate situation when you're trying to make parts fit, I don't know how many spring brands there are now, but there's probably 5-6 different spring brands that we're using, and you know, they all say they're 5-inch, and then we make the cup, and then this one's tight and that one's fine and this one's tight. And so we're slowly building a database of ones that need to be adjusted. Some of them, it's just that end coil, where that end coil gets a little bit of a hook on it and that digs in the cup, but it certainly ain't going to affect the spring, I don't think. if it gets stuck, unless you had to cut it to get it out of there. If it's rubbing on there, obviously, then it's not letting the bearing work like it should. But like I said, that going to the OD grab and trying to keep the tolerances tight so everything doesn't move around and precise is difficult brand to brand. But it'd be nice to know what kind of brand that was, or did you say? No. Yeah, if you could let what brand that was, what rate that was, everything changes with the rate too. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing, depending on the spring brand and the rate, like Chad said, they will change. But what Chad's talking about is this little lip right here. Am I correct in that?
Correct.
Yeah,
that guy
this
right
little lip right here, because if you look at the spring, now this one it's been trimmed down so that it's flush, but sometimes the way this last coil, this actually sticks out a little bit. The spring itself, if you measure from here to here, is still your 5-inch spring, but it might be a 5 1/4 out here on this little lip. And if your spring is like that, this is a dead coil right here where this is at. So you can take a grinder and just kind of trim that little lip right off, and it would be fine.
Yeah, that won't change the rate.
That won't, yeah, it's not going to affect the spring whatsoever. RJ, I want to thank you to you guys for everything since taking your class a couple of years ago. I've been more competitive, had more fun. I've learned so much from watching these Facebook videos in the chassis school. So thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule and sharing your knowledge. Actually, RJ, you are the type of guy that makes us do this, because we want to help you guys go faster. We want to, of course, sell you parts. I mean, that's part of our reasoning too. But the biggest thing is help. If we can make racing better, and now all of a sudden, if you are having more fun, what are you going to do? Well, you're not going to take up bowling. I mean, you're going to stay with you're probably going to stay racing. And that's the key to the economy of racing, is keeping racers racing. Rocky, going from a 200-pound left spring to a 100-pound left spring, gained 104 pounds. Yeah, that is true. I remember, and Rocky's car was the one we actually did that. I couldn't remember the actual number, but it went from I think like 90 pounds of bite to and gained to 204 pounds of bite, something like that. So it did gain more left rear bite, and like I say, if that's how you're going to run it, keep in mind when the car's dynamically, that spring doesn't have that load on it because it releases that load. So when the car is actually going through its motion, it's a static load, but I don't really believe that's what we need to be concerned with. I think it has a lot more to do with our dynamics. Jared, Chad, what is the compressed and extended length of your shorty slider?
So I assume you're talking about the mini that goes on top of the axle tube, and I don't have that. I don't have one here in the showroom, and I'm not sure off the top of my head what that number is. But if you give us a call tomorrow, we can certainly get that number for you. I know our standard short one is 21-inch extended, and I think that one's 5 inches shorter, so it might be 16. But like I said, I don't have that in front of me right here, so if you can give me a call tomorrow, we can certainly get that measured up for you.
Awesome.
Might be on wehrsmachine.com. I don't know if the 251M mini is on there, but I can check quick. But carry on.
Yeah, Eric said it's a 700-pound spring, and that's the stiffer springs have a tendency to, maybe like I said, where this has actually been wound right here on the edge, kind of, it's a sensitive area the way it is, but other than that, that's about all I can really tell you from my experiences. I do know there was a couple spring companies that we ran into some situations where their tolerances on some of the widths kind of got a little bit off a little bit, and I know that they're curing that. But all the spring companies, of course, are trying to build you a good product, and I'm sure that it's just one of those situations. All right. Well, if there's any other questions, we've got a few minutes left. Once again, we did add to the Knowledge Center last week. Rocky and Garrett and I did a spring video of switching a sport mod from a 200-pound right rear or 200-pound left rear spring to a 100-pound spring, showing you the effects and showing you what we did to accomplish that. We had quite a few people asking about that video, and so we went ahead and done that. If you're not joined in on the Racetech Info RTI Knowledge Center, I tell you what, there's a lot of great videos and a lot of great information there. Chad, on the Torrington bearing, how much grease do you recommend? Every bearing or every other one?
I would run every one. I would run some red and tacky. It's kind of thicker, and it gives you a little bit of a barrier also. So we got some data from a guy that ran all week in Arizona earlier in the year, and he had red and tacky in there, and he had it packed pretty solid in there, and it makes a nice little ring around it to protect the dirt from getting in there. So definitely a maintenance deal. You're going to want to be taking them things out and cleaning them. I don't know, Bob, if any of your guys are getting a lot of nights on them, what you're seeing there. Unfortunately, we don't get a whole lot of feedback. We get some of the guys calling us and telling us what's going on there. It's kind of a new trend too, so I'm sure that we'll get more data as we go forward, but you're always going to want to clean your bearings and re-grease them.
Well, and that's the thing with saying there's kind of more of a newer trend. We didn't have a lot of people on it last year. Some of the experiments we did, I really actually didn't recommend them that was a bearing that needed to have grease in it, because just wasn't a thought process at that time. I definitely learned when the season was over, it's a bearing that needs some grease in it. And I think that red grease, a thicker grease, makes a lot of sense. I never actually thought about that, Chad, but that's a great idea, because it will build kind of a shield around that bearing, and so definitely. Yeah, Rusty's sitting on the golf cart thinking we're supposed to be coming up to see you, Chad. Golf cart's behind Garrett there. Rusty has a tendency to like to sit on the golf cart. Anyway, Rusty's my dog, if any of you guys don't know who that is, but Rusty's my traveling companion. When we hit rumble strips, he kind of looks at me like, where in the hell are we going? Or where in the heck are we going? Sorry. What kind of grease on the Wehrs enclosed puck bar?
We use synthetic wheel bearing grease, so whatever you're doing your wheel bearings with is fine there.
I need Wehrs hitch receiver covers for my truck. Let's make that happen. Oh, that'd be a good idea.
Well, Dave, I think you would rather see me make that other part that you want me to make, right?
James, I recently installed your left front drop limit setup. Do you feel 1.5 is a good starting point? I have tried anywhere from 1.5 to the chain to tight at ride height. The car still does not seem to lift the left front. It almost feels as if it bounces the left front. Well, I'm not sure what the actual setup would be, what the car setup is. 1.5 inches is kind of where that's our starting point. And if it's not wanting to lift the left front, I'll have to think about that one. I've just not, that's a question I've not actually thought about. Traction in the rear tires is what's going to try to help lift that left front a little bit. And it's going to, now, when we're talking about lifting the left front, I mean, we're only talking 3/4 to an inch. I mean, that left front tire is still skimming. In fact, how I can actually tell a lot of guys if their left front the car looks like the left front's on the ground, but when the left front tire quits moving in the middle of the corner, that's telling me that it's just barely skimming the racetrack because they're on the brake or the brake is tight there. So you're not wanting to lift it a whole lot. The idea behind that chain is to keep it from lifting the left front. Brandon, with a left rear 16-inch 100-pound spring on a beam mod with a spring in front of the housing, how much preload would be too much at full droop? Can you have too much, and what would the effect be? In my opinion, if you get too much load, say 250 pounds of load as an example, I think that's just pushing the limit to the point where the car is going to feel a little inconsistent. It's going to try to feel more free getting into the corner because you're kind of, in a sense, loading the left rear hard, which is taking side bite out of the right rear. So I would actually think too much load is going to make the car free getting in, and then once it starts to settle down, the car's going to get free getting in, and then it's going to pick up a throttle push the second the car starts to go forward. So in my opinion, that would just going to make the car inconsistent. All right, we've got 8 minutes to go. Anything else, Chad, that you got going on you want to talk about?
Not really.
Dwayne says, my friend works and drives for Stuckey Enterprises, late models, here in Shreveport, and Earl Pearson Jr. is the title sponsor car from Stuckey Motorsports and driver for Lucas Late Models. And let me tell you, they got me on the red and tacky best grease I've ever used. Well, those guys would definitely have the credentials to give you an opinion, and I would probably go with what they had to say because they've proved it and they have the record behind them. I'd listen to those guys. Sean, when setting weight jacks, should the lower control arm be set level to know the angle of the spring? Level being straight line with the mounting points and the lower edge of the ball joint lip. Actually not. Well, yeah, if you're going off of the straight line and the lower edge of the ball joint lip, that's pretty close. What we have is we set the car, how we do it is we've got a specific ride height that we use, and then on our stuff, which is different than on yours, Sean, but on our stuff, we actually have a right front specific measurement for the shock absorber, and so that kind of sets our right front angle. But as a rule of thumb, I've always wanted my lower control arms at a slight angle upward. So in other words, if you actually drew a pencil line between the center of the mounting point of the inner mounting point of the A-frame, I would actually almost draw that center level to the very bottom edge of the ball joint holder itself. That's about where ours are at. Birdcage bearings versus bushings. What better, where, and when?
Well, bearings I think are better. Bronze right rear is somewhat popular. There's a bunch of race cars that run a bronze right rear. Definitely more maintenance. You got to work on it. But each cage needs work. So the bearing cages, you still need to unhook the 4-link rods and the shocks and spin them to relocate the grease. And the bronze cages, you just got to do that every single night because they don't have a seal basically. So you're using that grease in a bronze cage to push the dirt out of there. And where and when right rear would be the only place I'd put a bronze. Well, there's some people with bronze on the left rear. We had it when we first trended that back. I don't remember how many years it's been, but we did them for both sides. But some of the guys complained about the car being lazy. Well, the friction on that left rear cage kind of was making the car a little slow on entry, but the friction on the right rear cage is good because when you get rolled over in the corner and that cage is somewhat bound up, if you will, has a little bit of friction on it, kind of holds the car on the right rear in compression and holds the side bite in the race car. So that's the advantage of the bronze. Still sell quite a few of the bronze right rear cages. So it's a driver preference thing. A lot of guys like it, and some guys hate it. So there's a little bit of an advantage there for side bite, I feel.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The downside is the maintenance, but from what I've found, I think it gives it a little bit more side bite. It just, I like the action. It's lighter. Donna, how much dynamic rear steer do you start with? Well, of course, it depends. I'm going to assume that you're talking a modified. Even if you're talking a sport mod, like an IMCA Northern Sport mod or USRA B mod or anything like that, I still use that magic 2-inch number. I like to see that left rear. The right rear is actually not going to move. I mean, unless you have a lot of angle, which most people don't, the right rear is not going to really move more than 1/4 of an inch, depending on the angles that you have. All your movement really gets on the left rear. And I think there's 2 things about the rear steer that we need to understand. Granted, it steers the car, so when you get into the corner and you stab the throttle and the left rear crawls underneath there, it helps the car steer through the corner. But the other thing is the magic of getting that point to the point where that left rear gets to that magic number where you feel the load in the seat. And so sometimes if it goes too far forward, I think it makes the car a little bit too free up off the corner. But I would start with 2 inches and tune from there. Our simulator, when we set everything at ride heights with a simulator, it's 2 3/4 inches on our simulator. To be honest with you, I've never actually measured the amount of rear steer on one of our modifieds. That'll be a good thing to do here when one of these cars are sitting here. The UMP, thank you for a great show. Appreciate it, Don. No problem. Christopher, street and hobby stock metric versus leaf spring soaring X body. Well, I mean, a leaf spring car is definitely a drivable race car. There's no doubt about that. The downside to leaf springs are they're high maintenance and they go away relatively soon. If you get a spring that lasts, has a lot of life to it, doesn't have a whole lot of traction. If you get a spring that flexes and works really well, and I grew up in the leaf spring era. It's the repeatability of a coil spring car is just longer. I still believe a leaf spring car drives better. I mean, it's like driving your passenger car down the highway. I mean, it just feels stable. But once again, just the metric system works pretty good too. But so hopefully I helped you, Christopher. I don't know if I answered that correctly because it's kind of a toss-up. But leaf springs are pretty good. On a stock car, I've never understood how rake adds drive. Can you explain it adds drive? Trevor, I wished I could actually explain that question. I never could understand it too, and we used to have back in the old days, well, heck, there's our old buddy Pat.
He's alive.
Well, I kind of thought maybe he missed the show or something. I was a little bit disappointed. I was going to call him tomorrow and ask him what he'd been doing. But anyway, Trevor, back on your question, I think it's just that leverage action that helps that car try to lift itself. When you put more rake in the car, your upper arms, which technically are your traction arms, your upper arms have more angle. Anytime something that's pulling traction into the car, you put more angle on it. It's like if we had a pull bar and we put more angle on it, the car's going to get more traction because of the angle. So in my opinion, it would be, on a stock car when you can't change mounting places and everything has to be relatively stock. When you add and raise the back of the car up, it just puts more drive angle in those upper links. And the upper link on a stock 4-link car versus a modified 4-link car, your upper links are your traction bars, and your rear links or the lower links control everything from side to side. So once again, Matthew, my old buddy Matt, I haven't talked to you for quite some time. How often do you replace the bronze liner in your cage, or is there no need?
Man, if you keep them greased and spin them every few nights, and they tend to not wear that much, but you always want to take it and give it a side rock, keep your clamp rings good and tight. But if it gets too loose, then I would replace them. But as long as you do your maintenance and they feel good, I would keep running them.
All right. Justin's got our last question of the night. USRA A-mod on a lift arm. Where's a good starting point for pinion angle at static and into dynamic? Well, my opinion, I always like to see the pinion when you're under full power and under full load, that the pinion is 0. So it's at 0. I usually start like with a lift arm type car. I would be in that 7 degrees. That seems to be a very good place to start from, and then you can kind of measure it, from there if you're getting more travel. But 7 degrees is pretty common. I mean, that seems to be a good number to go to. Well, once again, another great show. Thanks, Chad, and thank you guys. We appreciate it. We appreciate your business, and we look forward to doing this every other week. Probably once we get into some of the more steady racing where we're racing every week, we might switch back to the weekly. That's going to kind of be up to you guys. We'll listen to your comments and see what you guys think. If you feel there's a need, we're more than happy to do that. Thanks again, Chad. It's been a great show.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, guys.